Good evening. I'm Ronald Lauder, President of the World Jewish Congress. On behalf of my co-chairs, David de Rothschild and Shela Safra, welcome and thank you for joining us. Joining us for the annual Theodor Herzl Award Gala dinner. If you think one man can change the world, think again. Theodor Herzl started the movement that created the Jewish state of Israel. In doing this, he transformed the Jewish people from ghetto Jews to proud, heroic Jews. This is the man who we name our award after. Unlike previous Herzl dinners, we are not gathered together in New York tonight because of the pandemic. We've created a unique gathering of Jewish people around the world, from the United States to Australia, from Buenos Aires to Bucharest, from Johannesburg to Jerusalem. We may not be together, but we are still connected. That goes to the heart of what the World Jewish Congress is all about. This one organization represents Jewish communities in more than 100 countries around the world. It's the umbrella organization for every Jewish person, everywhere. It began in 1936 when a tiny group of Jewish leaders gathered in Geneva to warn the world about the growing danger coming out of Nazi Germany. They failed because they did not have the power or the influence to stop Hitler. But there was another reason. Their warning fell on deaf ears because of the world's complete indifference to the plight of the Jews. Today, things have changed. The World Jewish Congress has the influence, and we have the power to make sure world leaders understand that when Jews in their countries are safe and free, everyone benefits. But we can't do this alone. I cannot do this alone. If you care about the future of the Jewish people, please stand with me and make your mark, just as Herzl did. I will tell you that being president of the World Jewish Congress has been one of the greatest honors of my life. Tonight, in the spirit of great statesmen who have been our past honorees, people who have shaped the world and stood by the Jewish people, the 2020 Herzl Award recipients, His Excellency United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres, and this year's Teddy Kollek Award for the achievement of Jewish culture goes to musical genius, Maestro Zubin Mehta, music director emeritus of the Israeli Philharmonic Orchestra. Their work, in different ways, has inspired the entire world, and like Herzl and Kollek, today's honorees have led lives that are impactful, even inspirational, and we begin tonight's program. It's my pleasure to call on my friend, Rabbi Arthur Schneier of New York's Park East Synagogue to offer an invocation, followed by a closer look at some of the people behind this great organization.
Well, my dear friend and a great leader of the World Jewish Congress, dear friends all, we're gathered to recall a tragic date, November 9 and 10, 1938, when 1,200 synagogues were burned and destroyed in Germany by the Nazis. Henry, your parents and you were fortunate. You fled earlier before that night of horror. I had to witness the burning of my synagogue in Vienna, my birthplace, with firemen and policemen rejoicing and standing by. Sadly, Ronald Lauder and I, Sunday morning after the heinous attack in Pittsburgh, after 11 Jews were killed just by going to prayer in the Tree of Life Synagogue, a rude awakening that the metastasized, widespread anti-Semitism, renewed anti-Semitism, has reached our shores, including the city of New York, the largest Jewish community outside Israel. Every year, before International Holocaust Remembrance Day, January 27th, liberation of Auschwitz, Secretary General Antonio Guterres, a dear, dear friend, and the entire diplomatic corps comes to Park East Synagogue to remember the tragedy of the Shoah, the loss of 6 million of our people. I asked the Secretary General, with Holocaust denial and revisionism, who is going to remember and tell the truth after my Holocaust survivors, myself, are no longer around? Who is going to go witness? And he said, we will. The outreach program of the United Nations will tell the truth, never to be forgotten. We honor him. We pray, may God give his choicest blessings as this dreamer and doer who gave his life to his country, Portugal, and now the leadership of the United Nations. May God guide him. And also, may the virus of hatred and bigotry that has afflicted the world come to an end. There's a prayer we recite it every year during the High Holy Days. So appropriate. Remove, God, pestilence, sword, famine and plunder, destruction and plague, disease and all persecution and hatred from us. And let us all say, Amen.
Thank you, Rabbi Schneier. Kol Israel Averim Zeh Bazeh. All Jews are responsible for one another. This principle is at the heart of the World Jewish Congress, the preeminent international Jewish organization representing over 100 Jewish communities across the globe and advocating on their behalf to governments, civil society, and other faith groups. My name is Alana Baranov, and I'm standing here on the east coast of South Africa. I am a proud member of the steering committee of the WJC's flagship program, the Jewish Diplomatic Corps. We are a network of 300 young professionals from around the world who represent world Jewry in international diplomatic arenas, ensuring a strong Jewish voice in global affairs. The importance of the World Jewish Congress to me is its global reach, as well as the way in which it puts Jewish communities in touch with each other and an international collective, but also the fact that it is an incredible repository of expertise, knowledge, and resources right at our fingertips. I am proud to be a part of an organization that is not only at the forefront of the fight against anti-Semitism and standing up for the rights of Jewish communities, but is also a respected authority on genocide awareness and combating all forms of hatred. The World Jewish Congress allows me the opportunity to give back to the Jewish world, protecting the legacy and traditions of those who came before me, as well as giving me the tools and the platform to build a secure and bright Jewish future. Let's take a moment now to look back at some of the WJC's achievements over the years, and then to hear some messages from our communities around the world. Thank you.
We are the World Jewish Congress. Founded in 1936, we have been here for the Jewish people ever since. We were the first organization to warn the world of Nazi Germany's final solution. We supported the founding of a Jewish state. Over the years, we have stood on the front lines in the efforts to support survivors and rebuild Jewish life from the ashes of the Holocaust. We were the ones who exposed Austrian President and former UN Secretary General Kurt Waldheim as a Nazi, implicated in war crimes. We aided the liberation of Soviet Jewry. We initiated Jewish Catholic dialogue, and we led the negotiations that resulted in a $1.25 billion settlement with Swiss banks for dormant accounts of Holocaust victims. This is our past, but we live in the present and look to the future. And we are here to continue our mission, motivated by the same vision that Theodor Herzl embodied. Today, there is only one organization that brings the Jewish people together to let the world know what we stand for. the World Jewish Congress. We bring together Jewish communities from more than 100 countries. We serve as a guiding force for the next generation of Jewish leaders. We continue to preserve the memory of the Holocaust through projects like the We Remember campaign and aboutholocaust.org, and through strong partnerships that we have formed with organizations such as UNESCO, the European Union, and social media companies. We have reached millions and are working to ensure that the lessons of the past can be used to build a better future. We protect the rights of Jews to freely practice their religion, while at the same time forging bonds with leaders of different faiths and nationalities. We do this so that we can stand united against the resurgence of neo-Nazism and white supremacy around the world, so that we can fight back against the waves of hate directed at the world's only Jewish state, Israel. In the 21st century, we have also taken our fight against anti-Semitism online. We are working with the world's largest internet and social media companies to improve their policies, bringing down hundreds of thousands of posts denigrating the Jewish people and denying or distorting the Holocaust. Why do we do this? Because we believe that this is our purpose. We believe that this is our way. We believe that a better world is possible, and we pledge to make it real.
In Belgium, 2 regions decided to outlaw our religious freedom. Thanks to the World Jewish Congress, we were able to challenge the legality of those measures.
For the past 16 years, neo-Nazis from Bulgaria and abroad were marching on the streets of Sofia. With the support of the World Jewish Congress, this year we were able to stop this march.
От имени Еврейского культурно-образовательного фонда GCC Тбилиси я выражаю глубокую благодарность за вашу финансовую поддержку в столь трудные для нас времена.
Y en nombre de la comunidad quería agradecer al Congreso Judío Mundial por el apoyo financiero que nos dieron en estos momentos de crisis y también al Congreso Judío Latinoamericano por el asesoramiento en el fortalecimiento de la seguridad de nuestras instituciones.
With World Jewish Congress help, we were able to connect with communities from all over the world and with Israel. This gave us a tremendous boost of morale at a difficult time.
We have a big hospital, Jewish hospital, with 400 patients. And in this time, the World Jewish Congress sent us some help to buy some equipment. It was very, very successful.
Symbolically, from the place where the synagogue and the Jewish Culture Center will be built, I just want to say thank you, World Jewish Congress. Thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you, World Jewish Congress, and благодаря.
תודה רבה והצלחה.
Thank you, World Jewish Congress. תודה מכל הלב.
Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. Köszönjük szépen.
Thank you, the World Jewish Congress. Dank u. Merci.
שלא ייגמר לעולם, החול והים, רישרוש של המים, ורק השמיים, תפילת האדם, החול
Good evening from Germany. My name is Gala. I'm a member of the World Jewish Congress Jewish Diplomatic Corps from Frankfurt. What you can see behind me is the West End Synagogue in Frankfurt. 82 years ago, on this night, the synagogue was lit up in flames. It was November 9, 1938, the so-called Kristallnacht, the night of broken glass. On this night, the Nazis set synagogues all over Germany on fire. Flames were lighting up the sky. The air smelled of ashes and smoke. The West End Synagogue behind me is the only one out of the 4 main synagogues in Frankfurt that survived the Holocaust, heavily damaged. The only reason it did not burn to the ground was that the fire brigade blew out the fire, not to save the synagogue, but to protect the residential homes nearby. On November 9, 1938, Jewish shops and homes were destroyed. Jews were arrested, abused, deported, and murdered. Kristallnacht marked the beginning of what would become the darkest times in human history, the Holocaust. 75 years have passed since Nazi Germany has been defeated, since the death and concentration camps have been liberated. This January, President Ronald Lauder visited Auschwitz-Birkenau on the 75th anniversary of its liberation. He addressed Auschwitz survivors, world leaders, and dignitaries in a moving and profound speech.
This terrible place called Auschwitz has sadly become an inseparable part of all of us. Auschwitz is like a terrible scar from a terrible trauma. It never goes away, and the pain never stops. This is about you, the survivors. And I cannot begin to tell you how grateful I am that you are here, and in some cases, here with your children and grandchildren. This is the legacy of Auschwitz. Do not be silent. Do not be complacent. Do not let this ever happen again to any people. Thank you.
We will now remember those who perished in the Holocaust. Please join me for a moment of silence.
Eli, Eli, I pray that these things never end. The sand and the sea, the rush of the waters, the crash of the heavens, the prayer of the heart, the sand and the sea, the rush of the waters, the crash of the heavens, the prayer of my heart.
It is no accident that we hold the Herzl Award dinner on November 9th, the anniversary of Kristallnacht. But the most important lesson we should all remember from Kristallnacht, it's not the 1,200 synagogues set on fire, or the shattered windows, or even the law-abiding Jewish citizens who were beaten in the streets. The real lesson of Kristallnacht was the world's reaction. There was none. The real lesson of Kristallnacht was the world's complete indifference to the Jewish people. In a meeting 5 days after Kristallnacht, Hitler said, "We can do whatever we want with the Jews because the world doesn't care." And that's exactly what he did. The Holocaust began on November 9th, 1938. It began on Kristallnacht. 82 years later, we still face indifference. But today, it's a very different form of indifference. It breaks my heart to say this, but it is Jewish indifference, indifference towards other Jews, indifference towards Israel, indifference to the growing anti-Semitism from the right and the left, that many Jews pretend is not happening. And this indifference is causing many young Jews to walk away from their religion, their traditions, and their people. Perhaps it is our tremendous success that has made us so complacent. We came out of the horrors of the Holocaust, and in just 75 years, Jews changed the miracle of a strong, prosperous, and brilliant Jewish state. And around the world, we have attained financial and political power. That past generation could only dream about it. But 75 years later, we are so divided. Secular against religious, religious against secular. Diaspora Jews who don't support Israel, Israelis who ignore the diaspora. We in the World Jewish Congress are fighting this indifference and divisions on every level. We work closely with religious and the non-religious communities. We defend Jews in the diaspora, and we will always defend Israel. As President of the World Jewish Congress, I have personally traveled around the world to meet the leaders of 40 countries. Wherever there is anti-Semitism, the World Jewish Congress confronts it head-on. We are creating a proud Jewish group of activists around the world who will be tomorrow's leaders. You have seen some of them tonight. We call them the World Jewish Congress Diplomatic Corps. There are now 325 JDs from 50 different countries. We are training them to be the next generation of articulate, energetic, and passionate Jewish leaders in the spirit of Theodor Herzl. Believe me, they are an impressive group. We're also monitoring the anti-Israel, anti-Jewish extremism on college campuses. This is a real and growing threat, and it seriously impacts the lives of our children and grandchildren. Too many colleges across America and worldwide have allowed a small band of anti-Israel activists and a growing number of anti-Israel professors to sway the narrative against Israel. And because too many Jews are indifferent to this and don't see it, universities too often look the other way as well. Let me state this emphatically. You can disagree with Israel's policies, but when a professor lies about Israel, its past and its present, and when a professor says Israel doesn't have the right to exist, that isn't anti-Zionism, that is anti-Semitism. One of my greatest plans that will ensure a future generation of Jewish people is the creation of 100 new Jewish schools across America and Europe. And where there is a Jewish community that needs one, I want every Jewish child that wants a Jewish education to have access to one. And we have to make this affordable. This is vital because too many young Jews are walking away from Judaism and they don't know what they're missing. They have to be taught this, and we have to give them the tools to learn it. Concerning the frightening, growing anti-Semitism that we see throughout the world, let me be clear on this as well. Anti-Semitism is racism, and it's coming from the right and the left, and is fueled by the internet. 1.7 million anti-Semitic incidents on the internet. Even in the halls of Congress, we have heard the most vile anti-Semitism coming from representatives, and their leaders would not even condemn them. Our political leaders must be held accountable. Jews should stop funding colleges that allow anti-Israel professors to teach their hatred. Not one penny of Jewish money should be given to colleges until they stop this. I promise you, the World Jewish Congress that defends Jewish communities in 100 countries throughout the diaspora will be in the lead of this new Jewish activism. We are at the forefront of the fight against anti-Semitism on social media, and a major policy change after our close work with Facebook, the internet giant. It is now removing posts with anti-Semitic stereotypes and Holocaust denial. For me, our protection of the smaller Jewish communities around the world is so important. These small communities were once thriving Jewish centers with great rabbis and yeshivas. Now they're just a shadow of what they once were. But I have seen firsthand the desire to not just survive, but to thrive. And many of them are growing. This is vital for all of us because Israel needs the support of a strong Jewish diaspora, just as we in the diaspora need the support of a strong Israel. I have a vision for the future of our Jewish people, and I am absolutely confident that we can achieve this. If we come together as one united Jewish family, the World Jewish Congress will devote all of its resources to this. Anywhere there is a Jew that needs our help, we'll be there. This is our mission, and it's been our mission since that group of Jewish leaders came together in Switzerland in 1936. If I have one legacy, this is my aim for as long as God allows me to do this. But I cannot do this alone. Give me your hand. Give me your help. Please join me in this vital work in joining the World Jewish Congress. And if we do this all together, we will not fail. Thank you. Toda Rabah. I want to share two stories with you. In 1986, my wife Jo Cal and I were living in Vienna, where I was serving as U.S. ambassador to Austria. The Museum of Modern Art had loaned some treasured paintings to the Belvedere Museum for a special show. At the dinner for the opening, Zubin Mehta, who was in Vienna with the Israeli Philharmonic Orchestra, sat next to Jo Cal. Here was one of the international maestros, born in Bombay, but he started speaking to Jo Cal in Yiddish. She thought he was an Indian Jew, so she invited Zubin Mehta to our home for Passover shortly after. Although he wasn't actually Jewish, we clearly saw that Zubin Mehta had a Jewish soul, and we have cherished this friendship ever since. Here's one more story, and this is very important. In 1991, during the first Gulf War, when Scud missiles were raining down in Israel, Zubin Mehta canceled long-term commitments around the world to fly into the war zone to show his support for the Jewish state. When it was suggested that no one should fly into Israel, he flew into the war zone. When Zubin was asked why he did this, he replied that he couldn't imagine not doing it. This is the measure of the man who received the Teddy Kollek Award for the advancement of Jewish culture. The Israeli Philharmonic has thrilled and moved audience around the world. It has been one of Israel's greatest ambassadors, and having Zubin Mehta, born in India, as a point man for the Philharmonic, has sent an important message to people everywhere. Zubin, we can never thank you enough. Before Zubin formally accepts this award, let us all enjoy the finale of the stunning last concert that Zubin made to conduct with the Israeli Philharmonic, Mahler's Resurrection.
Good evening, everybody. I cannot tell you what an honor it is to be receiving an award from the World Jewish Congress, particularly in the name of Teddy Kollek. My friendship with Teddy Kollek started even before the Six-Day War. He used to come to every concert of the Israel Philharmonic in Jerusalem and sit in the wings and fall asleep after half an hour. But he came to every one of them. Then we would go to an Arab restaurant in East Jerusalem to have dinner. He was very liked by the Arab population of East Jerusalem. In fact, I would like to tell you that a year after the Six-Day War, he arranged a concert for me and the orchestra in Bethlehem with the consent of the mayor of Bethlehem. And we did the Requiem of Verdi on the major square in front of the Church of the Nativity. And it was the first time that Jews, Arabs, and Christians sat together for any event. It was a very moving occasion. And Teddy was the one with the mayor of Jerusalem who organized the whole event. Just before I went on stage, he said to me, "You know, Zubin, we have just learned of a new organization that has started amongst the Arabs, and it's called Fatah. That was a predecessor of the Palestinian Liberal Organization. So if they start any kind of terrorism during the concert, don't run away, because if the public sees you running away, there'll be a chaos." I went to stage saying to myself, "Weis mir." But nothing happened. The concert was a huge success. And some of the soloists we had were Shirley Verrett, great American mezzo-soprano, and Richard Tucker also. And every time I met Richard later on, all he talked about was that concert that Teddy arranged. I arrived in Jerusalem on the 4th day of the 6-Day War with a friend of mine of the Israeli army, Memi de Shalit. I went to the King David Hotel. I think I was the only occupant there since, because of the war, everything was closed. The next morning, I went to Teddy's office. And lo and behold, I found there, sitting in front of him, David Ben-Gurion. And of course, I immediately started to leave, thinking I'm intruding their meeting. And they said, no, we are just kibitzing here. Please come be with us. Ben-Gurion started then, after what we spoke about, what's going on in the war. He knew a lot about Oriental religions, and he started to tell me about my Zoroastrian faith. I was surprised how much he knew about it. In the middle of this meeting, Teddy's secretary comes running and says, "Jerusalem is in our hands now." And Ben-Gurion got up and said about the wall, that this we will never give up again. After that, we started talking about giving a victory concert. Jerusalem was occupied by General Narkis, whose daughter later on and still is a member of the Israel Philharmonic Orchestra. The next morning, I went into East Jerusalem, and the soldier at the Mandelbaum gate told me I was the first civilian to cross over. I went with my friend, Memi de Shalit, to a hotel where General Herzl was having breakfast in East Jerusalem. Later on, as you know, he was president of Israel. Teddy and I go back so many years. And the last time I saw him was when he was living in an old people's home in Jerusalem. And I knew when I hugged him, it was the last time I would see him. My friends, you can imagine what an honor it is for me to get the Teddy Kollek Award. באמת תודה רבה.
Wow, that was unbelievable. What an honor it is to follow the great Zubin Mehta. Shalom. My name is Dr. Melissa Jane Kronfeld, and I'm a proud member of the World Jewish Congress Jewish Diplomatic Corps since 2015 and an Ola Kadasha since 2019. Tonight, I'm speaking to you from the heart of the Jewish world, from the soul of the Jewish people, from the eternal capital of the state of Israel, the city of Jerusalem. For 2,000 years, the Jewish people have yearned to return to their homeland, the land of Israel. So, how did we get here? The evolution of Aliyah from a dream to a reality is due in large measure to the father of modern Zionism, Theodor Herzl. Through his commitment, determination, and faith in the future, Theodor Herzl inspired a people to become a nation and catalyzed a movement that turned a nation into a state. It is because of Herzl that I am here today. It is because of Herzl that the Jewish people will remain here for all the days to come, while growing stronger with each and every single one of them. Tonight, the World Jewish Congress has the distinct privilege and honor to present the prestigious Theodor Herzl Award to United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres, a fitting tribute to a true friend of Israel. Join me in taking a moment to reflect on the history of this prominent award in the Jewish world, and then we will hear from one of my personal heroes and past winner of the Theodor Herzl Award, former United States Secretary of State, Dr. Henry Kissinger.
The World Jewish Congress has fought to make the world a better place and more equitable, more tolerant, more just, and safe for Jewish people worldwide.
We live in a world where an institution such as the World Jewish Congress is an absolute must.
Trust is the coin of the realm, and we need to rebuild it. And this organization, from all I can see, is helping to do that.
On behalf of the State of Israel, I want really to congratulate you for this service.
Friendship between Israel and the United States is a central element.
The vision and prophecy of Theodor Herzl has become real so many years after his death. And America's dedication, America's alliance, and America's support of the democratic state of Israel has never wavered, and it never will.
There could be no greater compliment than to have our family's name linked to the sacred name of Herzl through your prize.
We must never accept a situation where in Germany people have to be afraid because of their faith, because of their religion, because of where they come from. We have to do everything we can so as to ensure that Jews in Germany can live in freedom and in security.
Anti-Semitism is not treated with the same disdain as racism or other forms of hate. It is exactly the same. It must never be tolerated.
Never keep silent. Whenever Jews are threatened anywhere, don't keep silent.
We must confront anti-Semitism whenever it occurs. We must continue our work to defeat the stubborn evil of anti-Semitism.
All of us owe peace to the next generation. We are uniters, and we choose the power to heal over the call to hate.
It is a great privilege for me to be invited to speak on this occasion for the award of the Theodor Herzl Award to the Secretary General of the United Nations. The Secretary General has a distinguished career as a diplomat, as a humanitarian, its concern for human rights. When he became Secretary General, he did me the honor of inviting me for a long discussion about the future of peace and security. And in the years since, he has been a distinguished leader for the United Nations. He has managed to combine diplomacy and concern with the technical evolution of the world to make sure that it continues in a humanitarian direction. He has promoted peace efforts in many parts of the world, and most notably in the Middle East. And he has been distinguished in the exchanges of ideas among various groups and nations. For this group of distinguished Jewish people, he has a particular significance because both as Prime Minister of Portugal and in his present position, he has dedicated himself to the fight against anti-Semitism. And he has made it clear that the anti-Semitic tendencies in the world and the terrorism that still too frequently exists will be opposed by him not only in words, but in making concrete suggestions for specific acts. We are grateful to you, Mr. Secretary General, for what you have done both for world peace and for your regard and concern that the Jewish people should live in the world in an atmosphere of equality, goodwill, and reciprocity. So let me thank Grand Lauder for inviting me to this event, and let me say to the Secretary General what a pleasure and honor it is for me to be able to participate. Thank you.
Thank you, Henry. Mr. Secretary General, as I bestow upon you the World Jewish Congress' highest honor, our Theodor Herzl Award, I regret that I am unable to present this to you personally at this moment. But when you receive it, please know that it comes with our deepest appreciation to you for being the voice of fairness and equity that the State of Israel and the Jewish people have been hoping for at the United Nations for a long, long time. For too many decades, the UN has had a bizarre fixation on the Jewish state. This was not just dangerous for Israel, but it demeaned the United Nations as well. That fixation on Israel made the UN a less serious organization. I want to express our gratitude to you for calling out anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism, for refusing to bow to the pressure of those who seek to isolate, demonize, and delegitimize the only Jewish state in the world, Israel. We can think of no one who more aptly epitomizes and embodies Theodor Herzl's vision for a safer, more tolerant world for the Jewish people. Mr. Secretary General, thank you on behalf of the Jewish people.
Dear Mr. Lauder, dear friends of the World Jewish Congress, let me start by thanking Dr. Kissinger for his kind words. Successive Secretaries General of the United Nations have benefited from his perspectives on world affairs. I congratulate the legendary Zubin Mehta on receiving the Teddy Kollek Award for the advancement of Jewish culture. With its Theodor Herzl Award, the World Jewish Congress has bestowed on me a high honor. I take this as another sign of your enduring support for the work of the United Nations. Indeed, the engagement of the World Jewish Congress dates back to the San Francisco Conference in 1945, at which the World Organization was founded. Your involvement continued with your contributions to the elaboration of the landmark Refugee Convention of 1951. And it has spanned the decades since, rooted in the horror of the Holocaust and the plight of people anywhere who face hatred, insecurity, and need. Today, that mission, your mission, is more important than ever. In recent months, a steady stream of prejudice has continued to blight our world. Anti-Semitic assaults, harassment and vandalism, Holocaust denial, a guilty plea in a neo-Nazi plot to blow up a synagogue. And with COVID-19, another virus has spread, anti-Semitism and hatred of many kinds. Age-old blood libels have been given new life. Other groups have also been falsely accused and faced not just vilification, but violence. Meanwhile, disinformation and conspiracy theories have gained alarming ground. They come in different forms, but they all traffic in the same venom, dehumanizing and scapegoating the other, whether it is Jews, Muslims, migrants, refugees, and so many others. We must fight on two fronts, the pandemic and the poison. Let me stress, for me the fight against anti-Semitism is deeply personal. I came of age in modern Europe as it was recovering from the war. Opposition to the tyranny of fascism was central in the development of my social and political consciousness. To see neo-Nazis and white supremacists on the march today is bone-chilling. To see them infiltrating militaries and security establishments heightens the danger further still. We must stand together against hatred in all its forms. Our world today needs a return to reason and the rejection of the lies and loathing that propelled the Nazis and that fractured societies today. I cannot omit my own country's record from this picture. One of the darkest chapters of Portugal's history was the discrimination and persecution of the Jews during the Middle Ages, culminating in the criminal expulsion of its Jewish inhabitants in the 16th century. This was a colossal betrayal with consequence felt for centuries. Nothing can undo the damage. But during my time as Prime Minister, I felt it necessary to find ways to atone for Portugal's part in the xenophobia that was so widespread in Europe at the time. I worked with Parliament to adopt a decree revoking the expulsion. A symbolic step, to be sure, but one that reflected not only the depths of our remorse for the past, but a lesson learned for the future. Not long after, I visited the Netherlands, to which many Portuguese Jews had fled. And I went there to apologize on behalf of my country and to deposit a copy of the decree at the Portuguese synagogue in Amsterdam. A beautiful building, echoed with deathly silence, itself a symbol of a vibrant community lost to horror. The descendants of those that survived the expulsion from Portugal became the victims of the barbaric extermination by the Nazis. Now, as Secretary General, I'm working to mobilize a global coalition against bigotry. Even before the virus struck, following a surge in anti-Semitism, anti-Muslim hatred, racism, and other forms of discrimination, the United Nations launched a plan of action against hate speech. After a series of monstrous acts of mass murder at synagogues, but also mosques and churches, we introduced a plan to protect places of worship and other religious sites. And since the spread of the virus this year, our new verified initiative has been combating rampant misinformation about COVID-19. Dear friends, this ceremony coincides with the anniversary of Kristallnacht. In remembering that night when so much was broken, synagogues, shops, faith itself, I want to sound a note of hope for repair. It is within our power to emerge from the pandemic with stronger communities and more cohesive societies by addressing the inequalities and injustices that have been exposed so starkly. Solidarity within and among countries will be crucial. For us as individuals, that means speaking out even when one's own group may not be in the direct firing line and never abetting efforts to target others. Hatred doesn't discriminate. Let's remember what history tells us about the descent into repression and violence. One day it is your neighbor under attack, the next it is likely you. I'm also calling for a global ceasefire so that we can focus on our shared enemy, the virus. My envoys and I are exploring every possible opening for peace. In that context, and mindful of the role that the United Nations itself played in the establishment of the State of Israel, it remains my fervent hope that next year, a dialogue between Israelis and Palestinians can start again towards the goal of two states living side by side in harmony and peace in the context of a positive environment of regional cooperation recently expanded. Your contributions in advancing the human condition will be critical. I will continue to stand with you in the fight against anti-Semitism and discrimination of every kind. The United Nations is your steadfast ally in the essential struggle to uphold equality and dignity for all. Thank you again for this recognition.
Thank you very much, Mr. Secretary General. Through your words and deeds over many years, you have shown that you are a true friend and a devoted friend to the Jewish people and the State of Israel. Now, before we see a salute to the land of Israel, it is my great pleasure to introduce my friend and a man I admire greatly, the President of the Jewish State of Israel, Reuben Rivlin.
Our dearest friend in the World Jewish Congress, it is a great pleasure to greet you on this occasion and use that opportunity to thank you from the bottom of our heart for your extraordinary partnership with the Jewish Democratic State of Israel and for all that you do to counter anti-Semitism and to support Jewish communities all around the world.
To everyone watching tonight's gala around the world, thank you for sharing this unique evening with us and for your generous support to the World Jewish Congress continuing work. Thank you to Antonio Guterres and Zub Mehta for allowing us to honor you. I wish everyone a good health and hope that we see each other again in person at next year's annual Theodor Herzl Award Gala dinner. We will conclude tonight's program with a special rendition of Hatikva, sung by the students at the Lauder Jewish schools throughout Central Europe. Thank you, and be well. Good night.
Fire. Move